I can tell for sure that most of international students face many challenging situations. And I strongly believe if you learn how to deal with them from someone else's experience, you can save a lot of time. And that is why I was waiting for making this video for so long. Now, there are certain common aspects which comes out as a big change depending on where you are traveling, like the language, culture, and the weather. And I think the best way to deal with them is to try to educate yourself as much as possible before you actually travel to the country. For example, if it is a non-English speaking country, then you can already start by learning their language. If it is a cold weather country, then I was told numerous times not to bring any winter clothes from back home, because winter here in Belgium is very different from winter back in India. So winter clothes from home doesn't really work here. For culture, well, thanks to globalization, there are many common aspects from different parts of the world, such as many Hollywood movies and English songs are pretty much common in Belgium as well. When it comes to sports, except for some popular ones like football and tennis, cycling and Formula 1 is also part of common discussions here, which you don't see that often back home. Besides these cultural differences, there are certain behavioral patterns as well which can come across a little different to you. For example, most people here tend to be very direct when it comes to conversation. Now, that might come across very rude to you, but it's just like people don't like to sugarcoat things here. Well, it is very useful when you have to have an honest feedback from someone. But besides these three musketeers of struggle, there are certain minor parameters which you generally don't anticipate, considering that it might not create bigger difficulties for you, but it turns out that they can. I was already finding it a bit difficult to deal with the currency change here, but on the top of that, I had no clue how to judge the price or quality of a certain common supermarket product when I just didn't know the brand. In India, we have some concept called as maximum retail price or MRP, which means no matter which supermarket you go for buying certain normal packaged items, the prices are same everywhere, at least the maximum fixed price, except for some discounted shops, but yeah, generally the price is fixed. Here, there is no such concept. Exactly the same item you can find in different supermarket where they will charge different prices for the same product. One day, I wanted to buy a new pair of glasses, so I just went to a shop closest to me. There, the average price just for a frame was 400 euros. Now it turned out that it was a luxury brand shop. But before that, I knew things were a little bit expensive in Europe compared to India, but I had no idea about the standard. How expensive things should I expect? Because I didn't know the brand, because I didn't know the standard, I had no idea on how to judge the product's price depending on its quality. I distinctly remember having a conversation with two of my European friends about comparing the barbershop prices. I knew it was going to be a big problem, so I brought my own clipper here in Europe as well. But then I realized I'm not very good at styling my hairs. Now, I do understand things better here, but it was a big struggle at least for the first 2 months. Now, another struggle that you might face here is finding a good house, which is becoming a big problem across all the major cities in Europe. Not only just for us foreigners, but also for some locals as well. One Belgian friend of mine recently decided to move to Amsterdam for his job, but just because he couldn't find his house before his joining date, he decided to live in a caravan. Unfortunately, we cannot do that because we have to register our address as well. Now, speaking of registration, there are certain bureaucratic procedures which might be struggling for you as well, like registering your address for getting a residence permit or getting an healthcare insurance here, or even filing taxes as well. For me, transferring my COVID certificate into a European Green Pass was also a big struggle, but I hope that it's not a big problem anymore. But because I faced problem in dealing with the situations, I decided to document them in the form of videos as well, so that it can help you. Now you know what to do about it. You have to do all of this, but you also have to study. And most of us doesn't even have a close friend from back home or a family here. So it is highly advisable to be as social as possible. Just go out, try to explore new things, just talk to people, etc., etc. Now, there is another thing which you might be also struggling as a student, is securing a job offer. First of all, there is competition, and just because you are foreigner, it is naturally believed that you will not be the best fit for their company just because of the language. Plus, the employers also have to do some extra paperwork for you. There were a couple of interviews where I was just declined, basically just because the company wasn't sponsoring the work permit. But later this year, I found out that there was an option where you can work in Belgium without actually needing a work permit with 1 year stay back option. I mean, I knew there was something like that, but it's just that I didn't do my research. And then I found that a 1 year employment contract could easily replace as your financial proof. Now, but because this policy was implemented very recently in Belgium, many HRs here were not aware about that policy. And when I studied about that, it was very easy for me to convey the information to them. So basically, I just negotiated my offer with the HRs. The whole YouTube thing of spreading information came real handy that time. But even if you're not coming to Belgium, if you are going to some other country, it is very advisable if you just read their regulatory information itself. These are some of the struggles that I remember on the top of my head. But if I found some other struggles as well, then I would update them in the comments itself. But if you had different experience, feel free to share that in the comments. And yeah, thank you for your time. But before leaving, I just like to clarify one thing is, when you are dealing with these situations, it might be a struggle for you at that time, but when you look back, you realize it wasn't that bad. For me personally, it was a very good year, and I hope you'll have a good year too. So thank you, and see you in the next one.